Hey everybody, Norm here. Thanks for listening in this week, and thanks to our sponsor of this week's episode of This Only a Test, that's Starry Station. It's the touchscreen router for blazing fast Wi-Fi. Say goodbye to your Wi-Fi problems and those confusing blinking lights. Starry Station was designed to give you a better way to game, stream, and surf throughout your home. You can see your entire network at a glance, get suggestions on how to fix problems, and finally know if you're getting the internet speed you pay for. It even has parental controls that let you block usage on specific devices during certain hours of the day. And if you ever need help, you can request a support call right from a touchscreen, and a Starry expert will call you in minutes. Learn more at Starry Station at starry.com. That's starry.com/test, which is the name of this podcast. This is only a test. So let's start the show for Thursday, June 16th, 2016. Welcome to This is Only a Test, the official podcast of tested.com.
Right.
Look at that fucking squirrel on my bird feeder.
And then suddenly, the Enterprise D's bridge. Why'd you have to do that?
You're the one who gave me the keys, man.
Oh my goodness. I should not have given Will the keys. Hey, did you hear that? That was Will's voice. I want to introduce my co-host for this week. We have Will Smith.
Hi.
It's been a while since Will's been on the show.
It's been like a month probably, right? Maybe a month and a half?
Yeah. We've had Kishore in, and of course, Jeremy Williams.
Of course. And we also have live audio this week.
We have live audio. Will is
just as welcome as Will.
Is guest producing.
I can do all sorts of stuff. I can make horrible. I have questions from like last year on here.
All in soundboard.
You want to answer some 2015 questions?
Yeah, as you can see, we've cleaned up our office a little bit, but it's still not fully set up. This is going to be our podcast stage. We actually even got VR set up. Our producer, Adam Isaac, got rid of our cardboard boxes, but we're going to paint the walls, set up the lights. So we're still maybe a third of the way into the new podcast set and the new office.
This room's a little reverbier than our previous rooms.
Yeah.
I mean, audio-wise?
Yeah, I hear a bit of an echo.
I'm hearing a pretty good echo.
I wonder if that's going to come through on the podcast.
Yeah,
I look forward to that.
We might want to turn everything down just a little bit and bump the levels up in post.
Everyone get turned down. But how have you guys been?
Good.
It's been good, man. Let's see. Since I've been to New York and LA and a bunch of other places since we talked last. I went to the halal cart when I was in New York.
We have one now.
I know, but it's
in
not the
San
same.
Francisco.
It's good. But waiting on the side of the street on Fifth Avenue at like 48th or whatever it is, it seems different, right? But it's been good. How have you been? You've been all over the place.
Yeah, this has been. Has anything happened this week? Have things happened?
Not really.
I don't know.
No?
You want to call it a show?
Yeah. Nothing's happened. No tech news.
No, not really.
No, actually, we're probably going to cover not all that much. There's so much that's happened.
Yeah.
Let's cover like the big things, maybe outside of WWDC. There are two events going on this week. WWDC, Apple's annual developer conference, and that's in San Francisco. And of course, the annual E3, Electronic Entertainment Expo.
This might be the last one.
What? Last E3?
I mean, E3 is not healthy. What? Did you walk around the floor?
Yes.
Were there big empty spaces where there used to be booths filled with companies?
Oh, it was packed.
Okay. You walked around the hall with the
South
hardware
and
vendors.
West.
Really?
Yeah.
They've tried to kill E3 before and it hasn't worked.
That's true. I've been to Santa Monica before.
I don't know about E3. Okay, so let's talk about stuff that was not WWDC or E3 related, because we will cover all of that in depth.
You're going off book here.
Off book. So Microsoft bought LinkedIn.
$34 billion.
Their biggest acquisition ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's bigger than Skype. It's bigger than Intuit. I don't think they actually ended up buying Intuit, did they? I can't remember.
Know.
That was a long time ago.
Do either of you use LinkedIn?
Well, everyone has a LinkedIn account, but what does it mean to use it?
Norm doesn't have a LinkedIn account.
I don't have a LinkedIn
But come on, you must.
I don't.
No, he's never had to apply for a job.
I just knock on someone's door, put my hand out and shake it.
Look, motherfucker, I'm Norman Chan. I use LinkedIn a lot more now than I used to because when you need to find out who somebody that you're about to talk to on the phone is, it turned in the business world. LinkedIn is incredibly useful.
So it's like stalking, like date stalking,
It's
but
like
for
Facebook
business
stalking,
relationships.
Yeah.
I don't understand I don't understand what Microsoft is going to do with LinkedIn.
That's worth that amount of money.
That's worth $34 billion, but I'm also not a super smart Microsoft business guy like Satya Nadella or...
You would think for that amount of money, there'd be an obvious reason.
Well, I think that they think they can make more money than $36 billion with it.
God, you got to be kidding
I
me.
mean, look at the Minecraft acquisition's gone reasonably well for
That
them.
made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I could see that market.
Yeah, the I don't know. It seemed like a lot for a game, and if you didn't realize that every kid under 10 plays Minecraft,
Right.
I just don't understand how that aligns with Microsoft's cloud goals.
Yeah.
But I mean, who knows?
They bought a social network
Kind of.
Guess so.
and all the data within. Now they can hire all the best people.
That's true.
They can poach all the best people.
I mean, that might entirely be, but that seems like a lot of money to pay for poaching the best people. Yeah. Anyway, okay. What else you got?
Also,
Norm?
since last week, we had a Bluetooth 5 spec coming.
Really?
2x more range and 4x better speed.
What about the low power stuff? Is any of that changing, or did they talk about that?
I don't think there's low power stuff, but Bluetooth 5, successor to Bluetooth 4.2, which is what we have right now. Range, I think, is an important thing. Like speed,
Really?
yeah, I think range totally.
I always thought Bluetooth was intentionally short range, like 30 feet, because it was for devices that were right next to you. And in fact, you could use that to your advantage so that when you leave the radius, it creates an action.
How do you think Bluetooth can be improved? Like, do you think bandwidth is what they needed?
I don't have any problem with
More data?
Bluetooth. I didn't realize that we were short on speed either.
Uncompressed audio would be nice. Like the ability to pass uncompressed audio and have the DAC on the other end rather than on the sending end would be nice, or on the receiving end would be nice rather.
And also this past week, speaking of passing audio wirelessly, at least not through a 3.5 millimeter jack, we have an Android phone announced with no 3.5 millimeter jack.
It's USB-C though, right?
Yes, USB-C through audio, which was rumored, that type of lightning port audio connection for the next iPhone. I know it's not a phone either of you are going to buy, but if that becomes a trend, are you going to resist?
So the USB-C thing, I mean, no, probably not. But I mean, I'm going to be upset about it, right? I don't think anybody's excited about losing 3.5 millimeter jacks for audio because I have a dozen pairs of headphones that are awesome.
What's the reason? Is it to push people towards buying accessories, or is it to make a thinner phone?
I would say if it's to make a thinner phone, that's probably the wrong decision.
Yeah.
But it's to move, I think to move the DAC maybe off of the phone and make the DAC something that you're paying for and you can get upgrades for.
You still have to have a DAC though for the phone part of it.
Oh yeah, I'm yep.
It's interesting because I don't like Apple's going to say it's to make the phone thinner, right? Motorola, I don't think they gave a reason when they did, because this was a Motorola phone,
Moto
right?
Z, yep.
I just think I fundamentally don't understand why you would move away from it. You're going to save 30 cents on cost or something,
I think
right?
you can't make the pitch be because we want the phone to be thinner. I think that can be one of the side benefits of getting rid of the headphone jack. But I think it needs to be quality. It needs to be a qualitative improvement in the audio. But in the audio
it's
world.
not going to be for the vast majority of people who go out and buy $20 Skull Candy earbuds, right? They're going to have the same shitty audio that they have always had, but now they're going to have an even worse DAC than the one that was already in the phone. At least when the DAC's integrated with the phone and you're buying a reputable phone from somebody who pays attention to audio at all, you're going to have a decent DAC. It may not be great, but it'll be better. And I guess we should explain what the DAC is probably too. It's the digital to audio converter. It's the thing that turns ones and zeros into a square step waveform.
Waveform, yep.
Yeah.
But I think Apple, if they were to do it, they would be in a good place to do it because they control the big phone market.
Yeah, and they also
control the Beats headphone market.
Yeah.
So they could release both at the same time. It's not like if you buy the Moto Z, then you're still like, if you're looking for a nice Bluetooth headphone and a good DAC, there's no standard there right now. It's still all over the place. And then I think, is that the only big news? Do we want to talk about Gawker at all?
I mean, I think we all agree that billionaires funding lawsuits against media publications, even if we think that the media publication is frequently shitty, is bad.
I don't care. This is soap opera stuff. I don't care.
All right.
It's a shitty news organization. It's a shitty billionaire. Let them have their fun.
Okay.
You don't care about the precedent that it could set?
No, I mean, what precedent? It's not like it's a legal precedent.
When you look at the number of news organizations that could withstand a relentless torrent of lawsuits from a billionaire who can fund these indefinitely for virtually no cost to them, then it becomes really scary.
Hey, billionaires rule the world already, man. This isn't this isn't news.
So you're saying you welcome our new Weyland-Yutani overlords?
It's good that that's causing a little bit of discussion, but this stuff happens.
So going back to the Moto Z, which is Motorola's flagship phone. Motorola, if you guys recall, is now owned by Lenovo. Google sold Motorola. And at this event, this Lenovo World event, they announced the Moto Z, which has been mixed. There's been mixed reviews or reception to the phone, which isn't out yet. The Moto Z also is a modular phone. It's not going to be as modular as Project Aura, and that phone's still coming out from Google. But that's how they can also justify not having the 3.5 headphone jack. 3.5 millimeter headphone jack.
So you can put one on?
I think there's going to be the ability to put one on later.
Wow, that's skeezy. What is it more modular than that LG phone?
Yes.
Okay.
It doesn't disconnect funkily like the LG phone where the bottom part just leaves the phone and gets removed from the phone. But on the Lenovo side, another interesting thing that they announced is the Fab 2 Pro. This is, first of all, it's a terrible name. The Fab 2 Pro, spelled PHAB, as embracing phablet. It's 6.4 inches for a phone. So already I'm not interested. It's too big.
That's like this Nexus 7 almost.
That is almost as big as the Nexus 7 screen. 1440p display. But the interesting thing about this phone is that it has built-in Google Tango.
Oh, really?
This is the first consumer phone with the room scanning technology of Google Tango.
Have they announced an application for it?
I think the Tango project first of all, it was called Project Tango, and now it's just Tango. I think that it is an app itself. I'm not sure if it's going to be like that data will then be accessible by other apps to use for games and other things, which would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Or if it's going to be for more professional use, for and not for really a consumer device. But it's going to be $500, and that's going to be out in September. And I mean, having this type of technology where you can generate point clouds easily with any device in your pocket, whether to scan rooms or to scan objects, that's powerful.
It's one of those things that will have unintended consequences that are impossible to predict now.
Yep.
If you look at it's just a good thing.
If more and more people have this technology in their pocket and they start scanning their rooms, and then their neighbors are scanning the streets, and then Google starts to connect the point clouds, it's going to make Street View look like ancient technology.
And if you could pair that with the imagery, the actual camera sensor imagery, traditional sensor imagery, and connect point clouds to photos, and maybe have that be a passive thing where you're documenting the world around you.
It's pretty cool.
This is kind of what Microsoft wanted to do with their, I forget what it was called, that dragon.
The photo thing.
Yeah, photosynth.
Yeah, photosynth.
Where they would aggregate photos and do not almost like a photogrammetry thing and take huge collections, databases of photos that people uploaded to Microsoft or that they scraped, and then recreate landmarks in point clouds.
Did you actually see I saw a video somebody posted on Reddit the other day where they had taken thousands and thousands and thousands of people's pictures of landmarks at different times and made a time-lapse video with like publicly available photos in the cloud
of like the last 50 years.
I think it was even a smaller scale than that. I think it was over a matter of a couple of days of like Notre Dame and places like that. And that's kind of what Photosynth did, right?
Yep.
This is going to let you do internal Street View that's much better and more interesting than we've seen before, I think.
Yeah. All right. We've buried the lead long enough. Let's talk about the big two events, WWDC. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy Williams, who this is Christmas for you.
Now, come on.
Apple fanboy Jeremy Williams is sitting at his desk today.
Apple fanboy Jeremy Williams left the building about 2 years ago.
Okay. Who came in?
I still like Apple, but they have... Okay.
So you're saying Apple's not been good since Steve Jobs died?
You said it. All right. There were a lot of announcements. Nothing earth-shattering.
Yeah, this
right?
is not a hardware event.
There were, people had their fingers crossed that maybe some hardware would be announced. No hardware, just refreshes to all of the OSs. One of the OSs has been renamed. You no longer run OS 10 on that laptop. You run macOS.
Or lowercase m.
I'm still running OS 10
Okay,
here,
well,
sir.
when Sierra comes out, it will be macOS. But
Did they make a big deal about the naming?
of what?
Cred
Sierra?
Ferengi made his normal joke.
So full disclosure, I did not watch this live stream.
Wow.
It's because I didn't want to launch
Too
Safari.
important.
I didn't want to launch Safari to stream it.
I watched it on my Apple TV.
No, I was busy. I was
This
traveling.
was the first year you didn't have to, by the way. It ran in Windows 10
Edge.
under Edge.
I'd rather launch Safari than Edge, personally.
Now, what?
I'd rather launch Safari than Edge.
Well, yeah, but I was on PC, so I was actually quite happy about this because usually I have to get the laptop and watch it on that.
I was on the phone.
I was watching on the Apple TV, and the stream just kept dropping.
I was en route to E3, but okay, give me the high points.
All right, well, look, so every OS has been updated. WatchOS 3 finally launches apps quickly.
I don't believe it.
Well, you saw the demo.
I don't believe it.
Kevin Lynch showed it to you.
So the expectation is the Apple Watch has been out for over a year now. Launched last April.
Already on OS 2 now.
And the big thing was 1 year later, instead of revamping the hardware, which Apple says is selling well and it's becoming it's a business, they did software updates first. And OS 2 has been out for a while. You have it installed on your watch.
There's enough to improve in the software to make substantial changes.
Right.
The big story on the watch thing is that they completely redesigned the UI, it looks like.
Well, yeah,
sense.
so this now this dial where you see all your friends?
Which was like one button. There are two buttons on the watch.
Right, there's
for
the
people who don't know
crown
Apple
and then
watches.
the crown and then the big vertical button.
And the big vertical button is supposed to be your shortcuts to your favorites. So
Right.
when you click that, it brings up this rotary dial that gives you your quick access to your favorite contacts.
Gone. That's gone.
Sorry, friends.
What does the second button do?
Now it brings up the dock. They call it the dock button. So it's just like double tapping your home button on your iPhone. It brings up all of your apps that are sort of running.
And they're like live previews.
Alt
or
tab for
something?
watch.
Sure. What was that, Will?
They're like live previews, right? So they're actively updated in the background and live now, supposedly.
Those are all the apps that are sort of stored in memory and they're running. So
Can I add my own
get to them quickly?
watch face?
No, you can't design your own watch face. But you can now add the mini watch face.
Mini as in Minnie Mouse.
That's right.
or an activity circle watch face.
But now on the Minnie and the Mickey watch faces, if you tap them, they say the time in their voices. Are you sold?
No, I'm not sold.
I'm looking for the wah 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 sound effect.
There's activity sharing, so you can share your bars with your friends. There's an emergency thing, so if you hold the button down, it calls an ambulance.
That actually seemed really good.
Yeah.
It calls 911. It doesn't call an ambulance.
Sorry, it calls 911 and it will send your location to your emergency contacts.
And it works on Wi-Fi and is location aware. So if you're in Japan, it calls the Japanese 911 and not 911.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So it seems like the reason, and the three reasons to update watchOS at this point, one, to improve the experience for existing Apple Watch owners. And I don't know what the satisfaction ratings have been, but I gotta imagine it's not nearly as high as on their other devices,
specifically
on the iPhone and on the Mac.
I think nobody's running apps. I think that's the problem.
Okay, so change the behavior.
They have this whole app where you can see all the apps you're running. I don't know how many apps I have on my phone, but on my watch, I never use them. Because why would I? It takes 7 seconds to load them up.
Mine's for notifications.
So one, improve that experience.
Yeah.
Two, make it more appealing for someone to buy a watch now who may be waiting for that faster performance or a compelling killer app, killer reason to. And then three, lay the groundwork for the next generation of hardware. Presumably, watchOS 3 is going to be what the next Apple Watch, if we can expect that at the end of this year, will run on.
Maybe.
Do you think that they could potentially not release a new hardware this year?
A new watch? I
watch.
could see that.
You
I mean,
could see-
it'd be smart.
I mean, they need to make it a lot thinner, and that's probably going to take as much engineering time as I don't know what it's going to take, but they need their time to figure that out.
But you don't think they've already that was already in the roadmap?
I would think it would be in the roadmap, but I don't know if they've managed to accomplish.
How often do you wear your watch, Jeremy?
Every day.
See, I wear mine probably 2-3 days a week. It's mostly for notifications. I don't think apps would make me use this more.
Yeah, I don't know if I will either, but now I would be willing to check them out. I mean, now that they're actually runnable.
You think it would be smart for them to release new hardware or not release new hardware?
I don't know. I mean, they probably.
I think so many people were waiting. A lot of people, because the narrative in media and a lot of the tech coverage is Apple doesn't make great first generation products. First generation products are good for early adopters who want to try a new experience, but wait until the second or third generation.
Yeah, they iterate
and
well.
For the watch, unlike with the iPad and unlike with the iPhone, they're most likely, it looks like at this point, it's going to be a year and a half since the debut.
At least.
In 2 years since the announcement of the first Apple Watch, before people can buy it. So do you think they've changed or stretched out that roadmap and put in more of these software updates?
Well, there's not just software. There are a lot of new accessories you can buy for it.
Oh, come on.
No, that's like for watches. This is style stuff. I mean, they actually have, I think people care more about that than they do a phone case.
Those nylon bands are pretty dope.
And I get that that's a lifestyle that they're going to train people to do. And I bet that on the Pebble side, there's not a huge secondary market for watch bands and for other smart watches. People are if they're spending a ton of money on a watch, they're not going to trade it. And Apple, because it is a style brand, they have successfully sold people on new bands, new leather bands, and doing the limited run. Like you can only buy it this year, this season, and
they don't actually do that though, do they?
I think they do. I don't. Can you buy the first gen watch band or those?
Yeah. All of that stuff is still available as far as I know.
It's just there's just more.
Oh, I think it would be
now.
a much smarter business to be in to make it like this is the 2015
Limited
watch band,
versions.
and you buy it, and next year you buy the new watch band.
Well, get on LinkedIn and maybe you can get a job at Apple.
Yeah. We know people there.
Now you can scribble, you can write on your phone.
Okay.
Interestingly, they didn't ever demonstrate Siri on the watch. I'm sorry, you can write on your watch. I always say phone.
It's your phone watch.
Yeah, you can now scribble on it. You can write letters in it. You can write out. But the weird thing is, talking to your watch is actually very convenient. So
you feel like that's all the times we talk about Siri being lacking in the sense that there is no killer hardware platform for Siri, like where Alexa has the killer hardware platform is Echo because of the omnidirectional microphone array. Yeah. The thing that's always with you on the Apple side is your phone, but also your watch.
I think it's an excellent point.
So why isn't Siri their gateway, or why isn't the watch the gateway into ubiquitous Siri?
I think that's the point. And we'll talk about Siri more in a minute, I think, but a lot of the things that they talked about with Siri had a footnote of, oh, by the way, this also works on your watch. The things that I use the watch for most, because Siri's kind of garbage right now, I think, I use it a surprising amount for phone calls. So if I'm in the car, my car doesn't have hands-free, I can hit the button on the watch and just hold it up like this. And I use it enough that I actually flip the watch around.
Oh, you talk into your watch?
I talk into the watch.
Not just initiate phone calls, but you talk into it.
No, like if somebody calls me and I need to answer it and I don't want to have to fumble in the center console to get the headset out and plug that in, then I talk into the watch. And talking to the watch felt like a crazy thing that you do at the beginning, and it's become pretty normalized to me.
Well, talking to any stationary device, and I think Paris Lemon, what's the guy's name?
Who?
The Apple writer, MG Siegler.
Yeah.
He wrote a post about like the thing that sold him on Echo is pure convenience. And it may not, on paper, it sounds ridiculous that the convenience of talking to something without having to take a phone out of your pocket and press a button. Like taking something out of your pocket and pressing a button is not physically
it's not pressing
taxing.
one button. It's pressing 8 buttons. Like if you want to know what the weather is, you have to open the phone, you unlock it, you go to the weather app.
I'm saying the difference between activating Siri and interacting with Echo.
Yeah.
Even taking a phone, even with Siri being on, like with the always on listening and the iPhone 6 and 6S Plus. Yeah, it doesn't work very well, one, even when it's changed your voice. But two, the convenience difference of having to take something out of your pocket to use a service versus just talking to use a service, that was what everyone underestimated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Apple still doesn't have that yet.
And cooking is a great example of that. So while you're cooking, you set up timers with your voice. It's awesome.
And latency.
And multiples, like stacked timers, the whole thing. It's really good.
Yeah, it's accuracy and latency.
Okay, there's so much to cover.
Okay,
all right. So there's also tvOS. That you can now, like this huge, oh, by the way, with watchOS 3, you can now disable screenshots, which is like my favorite feature. You don't wear one.
I have a whole folder full of Apple Watch OS screenshots on my photos.
Now you can
because you accidentally take...
If you hit both buttons at the same time, screenshot.
If you flip it around, that doesn't happen as much.
I'm not going to flip it around.
So why couldn't they just make that screenshot task harder to do or more intentional?
I'm just
only
glad.
have 2 buttons, dude.
It's great. Like a long press or something, fine. Yeah, I'm just glad you can disable it. Okay, so tvOS now, you no longer have to have games support the remote. That's great. for people writing games. You can now just support a gamepad.
Right. So set this up, when the new Apple TV, this latest generation came out, apps was a big thing and games were a big thing, but the remote was the only bundled accessory.
And they changed the requirement at the last minute too. When
they
it came
did.
out. Yeah. So apparently originally you weren't required to support the remote. And then they said, all the games that are sold on Apple TV have to support the remote.
So people were hacking it, and it made no sense to use the remote in some games.
Yeah.
There's also now a remote app on the phone that can completely replace the bundled remote. So it works. It has Siri. It has touch. It has swipe.
I thought that was already out.
No, the old remote app has been around, but it never supported the new TV.
Oh, got it.
The other big one is that they're storing your sign-ins for all your services online attached to your Apple ID now, so that you sign into Netflix, you sign into Hulu, you sign into HBO, you sign into all that stuff one time, and then that transfers across to all of your Apple TVs.
Okay, so you do still have to sign into them individually, but only once.
And it may be that you sign into them on the phone, and then they sign in everywhere else
Got
as
it.
well. That part was unclear, but I think that's a good change.
Yeah, that's a pain.
One thing that we forgot on the watch is that developers now have access to the crown, which I never use on my phone.
Yep.
I mean, on my watch. And now developers can use that for games and whatever they want, I guess.
That was a weird one that they never had access to.
Yeah.
You mean even rotating the crown?
Yeah, like rotating the crown, the developer wasn't able to access. It
was touchscreen only.
Yes.
So macOS Sierra is the name. There is an auto unlock feature, which sounds actually kind of cool. If you have an Apple Watch,
Was that only for watch or was it for phone too?
they demonstrated with watch. So if you have your watch on, you're clearly identified. If you just open your screen, no passcode required.
And how's that connected?
Bluetooth.
It uses Bluetooth proximity. I mean, so Bluetooth proximity is something that literally Nokia had an application in 2003 or 2004 for my candy bar phone. You could put on the Windows machine, and when the phone was near enough, it would just unlock the PC for you. This is a feature that should have been around a much longer time ago.
This is very Apple. It's like using their entire ecosystem. There's desktop mirroring, so you can see the same desktop across your Macs.
You mean the files are shared across different Macs?
I mean the actual desktop experience. So like your apps that are open, you open one Mac, it's open on the other Mac.
So it's like Windows 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's Apple Pay on the web, which I think is great.
That's great.
Because I'm surprised that doesn't exist already. But now you can go to a store, click Pay with Apple Pay, and you
authenticate on the phone?
That's the word. You authenticate using your phone
Or the watch.
Just Touch ID.
So this is my question, because there were rumors leading up to WWDC, and obviously we didn't get new laptops, but there was a rumor that there would be Touch ID built into the next gen MacBook, whether through a capacitive touch strip or some sensor. I mean, biometrics on laptops is nothing new. Lenovo and other companies have been doing it for a long time on the PC side.
Long time.
But I think the most successful biometric system by far has been Touch ID.
Yeah. And
they've realized that it's more approaching it more as a matter of convenience again, as opposed to a matter of security, where is the trick.
When did Touch ID come out? Was it the 6 or was it the 5? 5S.
5S.
So in that time, since since my password manager supports Touch ID, the place that I go to get passwords has changed from my desktop computer where I type in the great big long password to the phone where I just pick up the phone and hit the button and jump right in.
And it's work for every application benefits from Touch ID. Like Amazon, you buy more stuff probably because it supports Touch ID.
I put things into my cart on my PC and I go to my phone to buy them because I don't even know my Amazon password.
That's a matter of convenience. And basically that system you're describing right now is because your computer doesn't have that Touch ID system.
Right.
And obviously on the PC side, it won't.
I think you're alluding to this is a clear sign that the next Mac probably will have Touch ID.
Well, but maybe not, because if they assume that if you own a Mac, you own an iPhone as well.
Yeah.
They could just rely on you to have the phone or the watch.
I don't like that. I don't like...
You want one-stop shop.
I bet it's coming.
So the thing I think that's interesting about this, and the reason I'm excited about Apple Pay isn't the convenience, it's the security. It's that these two-factor authentication, next-gen password things don't actually transmit a credit card number that can be reused for multiple transactions is the thing that's exciting about it. Because I've used a password manager for years. Typing in credit cards is no big deal. It happens. I click a fill-in button. It takes 3 clicks. Having that seamlessness and that transaction safety is a big improvement.
It's a good experience too. Yeah. And there's Siri on OS 10/macOS now.
Do you guys like Cortana on Windows 10?
Never used it.
Don't use it.
So I turned it on my machine at home because I use Windows primarily for work now. And it's maddening because it has false positives all the time. It's always turning on and beeping.
Oh, it's always on. It's like microphone
always
listening.
on and listening. Yeah.
And how do you activate it?
You say Cortana.
Okay.
Hey, Cortana. Hey, Cortana. Yeah, it's just sorry to all the Windows 10 people.
No, that's a really interesting point because we talk about the convenience offered for specific tasks on Echo and on Amazon's side, and coming soon on the Google Now and the Google Home device. But the cases where I'm using Echo, I'm not at a computer. I'm rarely at a computer. I'm not computing.
Yeah,
and passive listening is really beneficial when you're moving around or when you're doing things where your mind is engaged in a thing that's not computing.
Well, and they're the talkiest rooms in the house. Like mine's in my living room where people have conversations all day long. The interesting thing about Alexa is that it fails gracefully on a false positive, where the Cortana thing pops up and does a voice prompt that says, "Hey, I didn't understand that. Can you repeat it?" Which is not okay.
I've noticed, speaking of false positives, more frequently now. I have an Echo in my living room, and TV, like things on the TV, activate Echo all the time.
If you run the calibration process for it again, and that'll help fix that. Should we talk about iOS 10?
Sure.
Yes. So I guess this is the biggest one. You can now delete many of the Apple apps.
I thought you were going to talk about the 3D touch stuff.
Well, there's so much. I just wanted to say you could delete Apple apps because everybody wanted that.
That was a burn.
People hate that. They've been throwing them on.
Can you delete that entire folder all at once?
The Apple crap folder can all go away except for, I think, messages,
Safari. Yeah. Mail, probably.
I think Mail might have been on the delete list.
What?
I doubt it because that's like a system.
Game Center you can't delete, I think.
Anyway.
Phone and messages.
And they really do go away. But apparently, if you add up all of the Apple apps, it only comes to 150 megs. So
it's not space. It's more. It's mental.
It's icons.
It's mental.
Yeah, it's control, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you can't root it, you don't own it, man.
Why do you own an Apple device?
There's a new lock screen. So I don't know. They used to adopt everything from Android. I don't know if they're still doing that.
Raise to Wake was on an HTC phone in like 2012. It's a really nice feature.
So this solves our problem of Touch ID. Now you can actually see your notifications because when you raise the phone, it just turns on.
It's because Touch ID is too fast.
Yes. Yeah. There's different ways to. There's a new way. You can still access the camera in the same way, but there's now a new way just by swiping one direction from the lock screen,
as opposed to pulling it from the bottom corner.
Yes. Yeah, and also from hitting that icon.
Okay.
Now they turned Control Center. They revamped the Control Center so that when you swipe up, you get all those controls of your basic
Is it
devices.
customizable?
No. Oh. But you now swipe, and there's new panes of the control panel. So now there's a music pane, and if you run this new home app, there's a home pane.
So they added complexity to the thing that's supposed to simplify the quick interface to
the tray, the Android tray, which you swipe from most Android home screens, the top to the bottom. The control center on iOS is becoming that.
It really is deep, and it's getting more complex. You're right.
The interesting thing about the home stuff, they have an actual HomeKit, their home automation control stuff.
Yeah, are you excited by that? Because you kind of have some automated stuff.
Well, so my stuff isn't HomeKit compatible because you have to have a piece of hardware and you have to go through the whole Apple hardware process to do that. So like SmartThings and Wink and those guys aren't compatible at this point. I think Philips Hue is. Having quicker access to those controls is really good. But in a world where I can just say, Alexa, turn off the lights, it's less important.
Right.
And all that stuff is controlled with the Alexa right now.
I see. And they want to have it controlled with Siri. So, and that would do the same thing.
If they had a box that sat in the room and was always on, I didn't have to take my phone out of my pocket. Per Norm's earlier point, I'd be all about that.
Absolutely.
Have they changed how you can interact with notifications on the lock screen?
Yeah. No, notifications are now like heavily 3D touch enabled and heavily interactive. So now you can reply to text messages right from the notification screen.
You've been able to do that.
Not for notifications, only from like when you're in the home.
So if you send me a text, I can swipe to the right, hit reply, and it gives me the little thing at the top of the screen. Send me a text.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
it's been like that for a couple of years.
I thought that was just for the live notifications once you're in the phone.
No, but the thing I think that's changed is that now people that aren't Apple can do that.
Okay.
Because I think previously you couldn't do a Slack reply like that, and now there's an API that allows the quick reply.
So now like notifications can expand and they can take up
in
the
lock screen.
Yeah, in the lock screen.
Good.
And you can interact with them. I'm not going to send you a text.
Okay.
Did they fix? And I probably didn't talk about this. One of my pet peeves, and I'm not sure how many people this applies to, is when I get an email on my lock screen, you swipe the email and you get delete or archive. Do you guys see that? Right.
Are you using the default mail client?
No, I'm using Outlook.
Oh, okay.
Do you see delete or archive in your lock screen? Do you filter your mail from lock screen?
I use Inbox.
Yeah, I use Inbox too.
maybe-
Inbox has reply or archive, I think. I can't remember.
Yeah, so I get delete or archive, and I can archive messages without having to unlock the phone, archive mail without having to unlock the phone, which I love. But one is blue and one is red. Delete is, I believe, blue, or
That doesn't make sense.
delete is red, archive is blue.
$36 billion for LinkedIn, guys.
Yep. And then, but if you get a calendar invite, it pops up, and one says accept, and one says decline. Right?
Yeah.
The color for accept
boy.
is the same color as archive, and it looks just like a mail message. And so I think it looks like a mail message. I think I don't want to do this. I hit the button that I think is archive, and I've just accepted calendar invites.
It seems like this is just bad design on the part of whoever's making your calendar program.
Again, so much to cover.
Okay, all right.
There. Now, by the way, with the control center stuff, all of that stuff is now 3D touch enabled. So if you go down and you hit the stopwatch, it brings up suggested times to stopwatch.
What does 3D touching the flashlight icon do?
It does something.
Party strobe.
I forget. Okay, but it's like everything is 3D touch now.
I'm not excited about that.
Well, I have never been excited about 3D touch, but they seem to be going deeper with it. They're going all in on it. I want to see maybe they're going to come up with some interesting use cases for it. And interestingly, people who don't have phones that support 3D touch, a lot of these a lot of the functionality will be available to them
With long press.
probably. They didn't talk about it on screen, but it was discovered in the the betas that were released that it is available outside of the 6S.
How many people know that their phones do 3D touch?
Who have new phones?
Who have phones that
and
do
who
3D
didn't just buy
touch?
the new phone because it's a new one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is going. It's asking a lot of the user to.
I bet it would intersect with the people who know about the control center in general.
Well, the control center, there's at least an on-screen cue because it has that little triangle widget.
A lot of people don't know what is that on screen. What is that thing?
How'd you get that thing with the flashlight?
There's a universal clipboard, so if you copy and paste on your phone, you can now copy on your phone. You can paste on your Mac.
That's pretty cool.
That's kind of, I guess, yeah. Siri is open to developers, so people guessed that this was coming.
Yeah,
and it's typical Apple. It's sort of open to developers.
Siri Kit.
It's if you run a certain kind of app, you can also use Siri. So if you run a messaging, VoIP, ride-sharing, fitness, photo, or payment app, you're good, and you can incorporate Siri. And
No home automation, huh? I guess that goes into a HomeKit.
Right. And I'll be curious, and no mail, no email.
Sorry, inbox.
So I'm curious to see how this works. Like, can anybody do this? Will there be 100 messaging apps that can all incorporate Siri, and Siri will have to know how to incorporate this app name? And is that automated? Or it's interesting because eventually Siri is going to have to know there's 2 billion apps in the App Store. You can't possibly interact with every single app using its name in very specific ways.
It does that now. You can open any application on your phone.
Just sure, you can launch any app, but the functionality embedded in those apps makes this a much more difficult problem.
I assume that they're going to make them provide phonemes, phonetic spelling and stuff.
Or Siri just needs to get smarter, like Viv, where it can generate new instructions for itself contextually based on how you've been using it.
It'll be interesting.
Siri, that's one of the things that, like, if you have Siri mispronouncing, like Siri always mispronounces Joey's last name when you say call Joey Family. Yeah. So you can say that Joey Family family is pronounced Family.
Yeah.
And it'll correct
That's
that.
nice. I like that.
Yeah.
Messages is a huge thing.
So the Siri stuff is a big deal. Like this is something that like they launched Siri 6 years ago now, almost
On the 4S.
4S,
yes.
4S, yeah.
And
feature.
This is the first kind of significant. Like they've made a bunch of small changes over the years, and they made it a little bit better. This is the first time that they're saying, "Hey, we're coming out and we're doing a big overhaul on this." There's a lot of competition from everybody else. They've seen now how people want this to work in the form of the Echo and Google Now for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
I think that their approach to putting kind of a super smart AI, which was the other underpinning theme about this whole talk. This is why I was excited about this WWDC talk more than anything else. To Siri, so that it fulfills the promise that they made when they announced the 4S. They said it was going to be context aware. They said it was going to know where you are and give you results that are relevant to your particular location, the context that you're in, whether you're at work or at home or whatever. None of that stuff ended up happening, or if it did, it didn't work. And if they're actually able to deliver on it now, a mere 6 years later than they said they were going to, it's moderately exciting, I guess.
The future.
They seem very proud of Siri at this point, and that kind of goes against its reputation, unfortunately. But hopefully they are. That's justified because they have supposedly improved it. There's now Siri intelligence embedded into the suggestions that the text messenger gives you to auto type back replies.
At some point, they're going to need to iterate on Siri and give it a different name, or
that's what I said.
And change the voice. More importantly, because people have associated the voice with the poor performance.
That's right.
No, Siri. I meant, hey Siri.
Let me introduce Siri's smarter, younger sibling,
Sierra.
Right? Plenty of vowels. Siru.
The payments thing for the voice stuff is interesting too, because you're going to get the, hey Siri, Square Cash Will Smith $200. And, I just made $3,000.
No, I said play Summertime by Will Smith.
Yeah.
Good God. So can we talk about messages?
Yeah, I guess.
This is a big thing.
It is. I
don't think so.
This is the one I'm excited about just because it is like everyone else. It's the most used app on my phone. You can now send drawings. You can, the emojis are 4 times bigger. So if you just send emojis, they come across nice and big. This I don't like. There's emojification so that if you type a sentence and then click the emoji icon, it highlights in orange the words that can be replaced with emojis.
I like that. I thought that was a good feature.
And you tap, now everyone is going to be doing it, and I'm going to have to think harder about my messages. Like
you'll just start to internalize.
Does it work the other way?
I have to decipher them.
Does it work the other way, where when you receive a sequence of emojis,
turns it back into
you
words.
can press a button and it turns it back into the words?
I love that.
I need that.
That would be good.
iOS 11.
And it's like iOS, it's like Apple's version of Google Translate.
Old guy mode.
No, because it's totally emojis. I know a lot of people use it, and in Twitter it's been popping up with hashtags and stuff like that. But people who maybe need to communicate with other people of different languages, emojis is a universal language.
Oh, it's the glyphification of like we could be at peak literacy right now because of emoji.
That's the saddest thing.
No,
we could be at peak literacy, and we could be at total peak surveillance.
That's right.
For maximum convenience.
We have love, silent movies, and emojis.
Because of because of computers and because of phones, everybody knows how to read now. That didn't 50 years ago.
I'm going to need to hire a child to help me decipher the emojis.
You just need to start having kids, Norm. It's time.
But the point I make is that there are people who, for example, we have a friend who has a relation who speaks a different language and they can't communicate. One speaks English, one speaks Chinese.
Yeah.
But to communicate, they use emojis.
They should try Google Translate. So there's bubble animations so that you can now slam your messages down onto your friend's screen and they go bam, and they make all the other messages go whoa, 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 whoa.
Nope.
You can have them like whispering.
I'm doing that for every message I ever send.
You think Johnny Ive was there? I was like, this is it. This is it, guys.
There's a new one where it's like invisible text, so that you can send a message and they see this sparkly text and you have to swipe over it to remove the sparkle.
This segment, by the way, was filled with the worst dad jokes of what is traditionally the most dad joke-ish Apple event of the year.
What was that?
It was just dad joke after dad joke.
There's now an app drawer just for messages. So when you're in messages, you can pull up an app's like drawer of all the apps you've bought for messages, because now messages is exposed to developers.
So like you can take photos from your Google Photos account and drag and drop them into the message.
Right. So this is, I think, useful. And I think they're taking a lot of lessons from the WeChat and all the very popular I guess Snapchat also does it, but and Google with the Google keyboard importing GIFs like that. That's all very,
and they demonstrated that exact same thing.
Yeah.
There's also what is that service that puts your face onto dancing characters? They demonstrated
Jib Jab.
Like the Jib Jab's a perfect example.
Right. I think the phone as a phone, smartphone, computing device, and then communications device. Communication is the number one reason, whether it's through a social network or through text messaging, and to make messages more robust is no-brainer to making iOS and making iPhone essential to everyone. And it's the reason that messages isn't on any other platform.
Well, people are supposing that's coming. Like they think Android must be next.
You think messages for Android?
Why not?
There's no way you compete with WeChat and all those other things if you're not on Android.
Messages is if it's the most used app on iPhone, it is the killer default app on iPhone, and you keep people on by making the moneymaker is hardware. You keep people buying the phones every year and upgrading the OSs by.
You think the ability to send cool messages
I think it's really unlikely that Apple's going to release messages on any other platforms.
I don't know. I mean, they did it with their browser. Not on Android, but they have released on other devices.
And it's almost always been bad too. The one thing that I thought was really interesting about that photo tray demo is that it means that they've learned the lesson that Microsoft learned with their charms. Is that what it was? That people want to pull stuff into the app that they're in rather than push it from the app that they need it from. And that's that's a big deal. I think all of this comes as a result of the work that they did to give them different size viewports on the applications a couple of years ago.
Right.
And I hope that we'll see more pulls from the app that the stuff's in that I need it rather than push from the app to where it is to where I need it.
And there's a new stronger push towards widgets now, system wide. So
I think that's representative of the pull rather than push.
That's what you're saying. Exactly. And then now like every app has a widget component that can just be embedded on your, in the OS all the time.
Just as an example of the workflow, if I have a document in Google Docs and I'm in Slack and I need to share it in Slack, right now the way you do that is to go to Google Docs, hit the share button, pull up the thing at the bottom, scroll over until you see Slack, do the modality from there. With the widget stuff, you'll be in Slack and you'll say, oh, I want to add something. It's a plus. You hit the plus button in Slack, and then you choose from the apps that are available with widgets, pull the Google Drive thing, share the document, and it's done. I know that it seems like the most arbitrary, complainy thing, but it's why people use copy and paste instead of the share modes in the applications, which are usually much more robust.
It's tricky.
Better.
I can see how that's a tricky thing to balance for some developers, though, because they might want the user to be inside their app, and they don't want to, give all the control to another app and just hand the user what they want. But they have to prioritize user experience, or they won't use the app.
Well, does that tie into their new file system that they're bringing out for macOS and iOS?
I don't know anything about that. Do you?
I read a little bit. It's designed from the ground up for encryption and performance with SSDs. There was John Gruber posted something about it yesterday afternoon. I read the first paragraph and then moved on because I didn't have a whole lot of time.
Doesn't it already exist in the watch? Is that where it is now, and they're bringing it to the other platforms?
I'm not sure. They talked a lot about security on Monday, whatever day.
That's always their thing now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because it's them versus the man. It's the man versus the man.
They're not Google.
Well, and also they're not the FBI.
That's true.
Yeah.
They've made that very clear this year. There is a new music app redesigned.
Hey, you skipped over photos.
I'm going back up to because that's more important. There's a new Photos app. And the cool thing, just technically, is that it now does facial recognition locally on the device. And this speaks to your security thing. They could have easily, because they're already sending all your photos up to the cloud anyway in most cases, they could have done this analyzation in the cloud, but they made a strong point of saying they're doing it locally on the device, which I think is cool from a technical perspective. I mean, that's a lot of processing for your phone to do.
I wish that you could opt in for some of the Siri features to be done locally on the device, like it did before Siri existed.
Voice control.
Voice control, and I wish that they would, as computing power gets higher, do more of that locally so you don't have to wait for Siri in bad reception areas.
Mm-hmm. And you get a higher quality voice too. You can tell when you're getting the downloaded Siri voice. It doesn't sound as good.
The other thing with photos is now you can capture raw photos and edit them in apps. Raw photo support is coming to iOS 10.
Oh, you like that, don't you?
I do like that. Yeah, actually, it's not confirmed yet whether you'll be able to take raw photos, whether it will save a digital negative DNG file in the default camera app, but some of the beta testers say that is the case.
That's cool. There's a memories tab now. So, like Google does these things where they compile all of your photos from certain trips into collages and videos, and they put music to them.
Very poorly.
But
I actually like that. Well, okay.
It's a free automatic thing. I watch them. I rarely share them because they always get it wrong. Like there's some other person's kid in my album. But
you can take those out. You can go in and remove. It takes like 3 seconds to get rid of the rando kid.
Storifying, it works best when you feed it more things.
Yeah.
And so it is reflective of how you document with your device.
Apple's pretty good about presentation. So I'll be curious. I'm curious about this feature. It's another, again, automatic. It knows where you took the photos. It now does all this facial recognition locally. So it's going to be able to combine. And what's cool is you'll be able to search photos for specific people very easily now, which I think that's kind of neat.
So I just uploaded all of my photos to Google Photos, like 60 gigs of photos from the last 20 years.
Convenience through total surveillance.
At some point you just have to decide you're going to love the machine, Norm.
Yep.
Also, their online storage was cheaper than me backing that stuff up myself. So it's really interesting to me how Google presents that stuff, and it's very skeuomorphic and old-timey, which helps cover up the jankiness. So, for example, like, I think when the algorithm thinks that you have something that it's confused by, and it's like, is this picture is a little framed badly, but it's kind of a good, like, people are smiling and it looks like they're having fun. So it does the 8mm, the old 70s film strip style thing with all the shutter and the chunking. And because of that presentation, me as a 40-year-old guy who used to watch slideshows from family vacations with that stuff, I kind of excuse the jankiness of the algorithm because of the way they present it.
Hey, it's free. I mean, it's
not. I'm paying money for it,
but it's a free service. Like you're paying for the storage. The fact that they do that is free.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to edit the music. If you don't like it, you can change it and that kind of thing.
I love the way as somebody who doesn't curate my photos as I shoot them, the services that pull out the stuff that the machine thinks is interesting is incredibly useful.
Yeah. So we mentioned there's a home app. There's a HomeKit Hub. Did I write that?
I didn't put that in there. They didn't talk. So the home app is just a place to chunk all of the HomeKit compatible stuff. The interesting thing that's happened since the last time we talked about HomeKit, or at least the last time I was here when we talked about HomeKit, is that now there are some open source projects that you can run on local machines. Like if you have a FreeBSD machine running FreeNAS or something in your house, then you can run a bridge app that will bridge you from SmartThings or Wink or whatever to HomeKit.
Yeah.
It does that jump for you. So then theoretically you'll be able to plug this stuff into there.
So you'll be able to do that.
Presumably.
Okay. Because the thing that they pushed about their app is scenes, where it's not just a button for your light switch. It's a button that is a batch.
That's a common feature.
I would think so.
Yeah, like if you set this home automation stuff up properly, the lights should just turn on when it gets dark in the room and turn off, 20 minutes after there stops being motion in the room after bedtime, right? Mm-hmm. You shouldn't have to, like my daughter's lights come on around the time that we start tucking her in for bed, and then they turn off at the time that she goes to bed and stay off until the morning.
Now, the demo they demonstrated they want to get towards the Jarvis experience where that you'd say good morning to Siri, and she just turns your stuff on and gets your coffee going and raises your blinds.
Yeah, but you shouldn't need that.
What do you mean?
Well, it should just be if this stuff is set up right and it's scriptable in the right way.
It's just
it should be smart enough. No, it should be smart enough that it looks. If you have motion sensors in the room, then the room knows when you're up and moving around and when there's people there, and it should just be smart enough to go.
I like your thinking.
And that when you get up out of bed, you walk into the bathroom.
Yep.
The Sonos pops on with your NPR morning edition or whatever you want to listen to, and the little screen that's mounted behind your mirror pops up and all that stuff.
Nobody's talking to you at all. It just happens.
I want to have no interaction. Like at that point, you use the voice interface with Alexa or Siri or whatever only to fix errors, not to
right.
actually control it.
By the way, last week I think we talked about should digital assistants have faces?
Yeah.
And whether or not that's a good idea.
Yeah, it's all Scarlett Johansson, right?
No.
Well, I didn't mention it, of course, to my 6-year-old, and she said, "Daddy, I wish Alexa had a face."
Well, we talked about what it would be like, a fun experiment if you got like sketch artists, the people that police officers work with, to sketch for people and have everyone describe what they think.
This is amazing.
Siri,
you shouldn't have put this on the podcast.
Alexa, and Cortana look like.
Don't you like this?
This is great. You should absolutely do this.
Yeah.
Patent pending.
And I was saying I use British Siri, so I bet she's going to look a little different.
Use British Siri? What the hell, man?
You must use. I was so fed up with Siri.
What?
That I had to change the voice just to use her.
Okay, Benedict Arnold.
I'm not kidding.
What, are you out making out with King George III over there? What's going on, man?
Little frustrates me as much as I have been frustrated with this Siri woman.
She's not a good person.
British Siri and I are getting along.
There's
fine.
my artist rendition.
Happy face.
The phone app. I didn't hear this announced, but I read it later. The phone app now automatically transcribes voicemails.
That's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's again a feature that a lot of people take for granted with like Google Voice.
Right. Does anyone use that?
Do
still?
people leave
I use that
voicemails
all the time?
Do you still use that? Cool.
Yeah.
All right. You can.
Google Voice is my work number, and I use that as a way if I don't, as opposed to listen to the voicemail.
Yeah.
To decide whether I want to listen to the voicemail.
Gibberish.
No, but I get context, right? I get context.
You know
in the
who
voicemail,
it's from, yeah.
And I get if it's an unknown number, then I get context in the transcription. Maybe not the exact details, but in those keywords, I get a good sense. Okay, do I need to listen to the voicemail or not?
There's now the phone can block spam callers based on a list you give it.
Do you get it? Well, no, it's not just. I think it's smarter across the network, right?
Yeah. It's like you subscribe to a list.
Yeah.
And VoIP apps can now integrate into the phone app.
What does that mean?
It means like you can now get a real phone call, like, and everything behaves as if it's a phone call on your phone when you get a VoIP call.
So this is an API. So things like Skype, you can dial from phone apps.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that I think is a huge trend going forward. The lesser services not being locked into the apps.
Exactly.
For the like Uber, for example, being accessible from messages or Facebook
Siri.
Messenger or all that stuff. Like the service is the value, and switching between the apps, that paradigm that you think about of being siloed within the different experience, that goes away.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. The hardware is getting more capable, and we're moving back to the multitasking bloat that we had with Windows Vista when the iPhone launched.
It still did take them a long time to open up the OS, and it's still baby steps at a time. Tim Cook came on at the end, and he announced Swift Playgrounds, Swift being their new programming language that they unveiled a couple years ago. And it's a great programming language, and it's cool that they have this playground, which is supposed to introduce kids to Swift as their first language. It's an app where you drag and drop, functions, and there's very little typing net required. And it's kind of like Scratch, the MIT language that all the kids use in schools. It's cool. Good for them. And that was pretty much the whole WWDC.
No iTunes?
No. And they revamped the music app, but it's still unclear. Like the whole problem of being able to purchase music, and even though you subscribe to Apple Music, is still very confusing. Like the fact that there's an iTunes app and a music app is still a problem, I think.
Well, there's not an iTunes app and a music app.
Isn't there?
No.
Well,
music there's iTunes.
Well, there's iTunes on the computer.
Oh man, you're right. Because where do you go to get videos?
Right.
I don't know. I don't ever use iTunes to buy music. I just
I got iTunes Store. It's iTunes Store.
Yeah, you're right. Okay,
that's an app, and then
dumb.
there's the music app. So it's still confusing. It's a problem. That's it. That's WWDC.
WWDC. No hardware, so we're going to wait till later events in late summer or fall for a new iPhone, maybe new Apple Watch. They might do more under the radar hardware refreshes for laptops, but if there's going to be a big update, then maybe they'll do a new event. Is this the last WWDC in this facility? Are they going to go from Moscone to new headquarters next year?
Right. Well, they did say that.
Did they say that?
They said their last one in their location was the last one.
Okay.
Until they get to the mothership.
Town hall meeting. Town hall building, which you were at.
I doubt it. That's not going to be big enough.
The town hall building's tiny. It's like 400 people.
Right. Well, they're definitely not going to go what Google did and blow it up to
Shoreline. Did people
Shoreline.
like that?
No.
I can't imagine. It's hard to get to, and like everybody got really badly sunburned, right?
Your developer conference should not be a festival.
It should not be outside.
No.
Inside, like decent people.
All right. I commend us for going for an hour without talking about virtual reality or E3. And we're going to hold off for another minute because I need to thank the other sponsor for this week's episode. And that sponsor is Atlassian. Atlassian. Wow. Oh, music. Today, nearly anything is possible, and if we can dream it, teams can build it. So how do you bring everyone together to create what's next? The solution: team up with Atlassian, makers of collaboration software that lets teams work and communicate better together. Assign, track, and manage tasks on any project, no matter how complex, using Jira. Create and share content, organize results with Confluence, instant message or video chat with HipChat, and test and review and manage code in real time with Bitbucket. Go ahead and visit Atlassian.com. That's Atlassian.com. And Atlassian helping teams everywhere create what's next. Thank them for supporting this episode of This Is Only a Test. And now it's time for...
The VR Minute. Virtual reality this week.
All right, E3.
You skipped the Xbox stuff.
The Xbox
What
stuff?
Xbox stuff?
They announced a new Xbox and Project Scorpio.
Well, that's coming.
E3.
It's
E3.
all coming.
All part of E3.
So is E3 our VR minute? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes.
All right.
Let's
Virtual reality.
Everything is VR now.
It really is.
right. I
Look, then Fallout, Doom. Let's just make them VR. Fuck it.
New consoles first. Xbox. Despite there
This is
being
weird.
rumors and confirmations in the Financial Times of all places that Sony was going to do a new PlayStation called the PlayStation Neo. PS 4.5, there was no such announcement of the One, PlayStation the One, appearing at E3.
Oh, they didn't announce it?
No PS Neo.
Did they announce a Slim?
Nope, no new PlayStation hardware. Wow. In fact, we got both a Slim and an announcement of a next-gen console from the other side on Microsoft. Well,
I mean,
of course they have things to lose, but you're right. They were not selling as well as the PlayStation.
Yeah.
In this generation so far, I think PS4 was better received at launch initially.
And their third-party attach rate is different.
But we are several years in now to this console generation. So on the Microsoft side, we have the Xbox One S.
Yes.
It's 40%.
The X-Bones?
Wait, X-Bones. Nice.
It's good looking. I'll give him that.
Yeah, well, it does. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the PS2 design, where they fake how thin it looks, but actually has that bulky part that is a different color, and they hide it in the photos.
It looks like the white robots from the Will Smith banger iRobot.
I like that.
Yeah.
So it's a white design. It can lay on flat or vertically. The power brick is now built in.
That's the best feature.
That is very useful. It will sell with a 2 terabyte version at launch, and then go cheaper for a 1 terabyte and a 500 gigabyte version. Along with that, a new customizable controller that you can use a website to design.
It's a little bit more expensive than the normal one, right? It's like $79 versus $50.
Yep, that's right.
But it comes with one of those?
It doesn't. I don't think it
comes with so they redesigned the controller a little bit. It uses Bluetooth now. So this is, I think, the third or fourth revision of the stock Xbox One controller. The original ones that launched, the day one edition, which I have with the stencil on it, had bumper buttons that were really mushy and soft. And you couldn't tell when you'd hit them. They fixed that. They fixed a couple of other things. The new one includes Bluetooth, so that it will be Windows compatible as well.
Without the dongle.
Without a dongle.
So the old one used Wi-Fi?
It uses Wi-Fi Direct, I think.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, of course, there's the expensive Elite controller, which is awesome. That's for some. Will loves it. I think it's a little too excessive.
It's ridiculous unless it's ridiculous for people unless you're playing at a crazy high level, or if you have accessibility things.
You?
Yeah, man. Nobody rolls like me.
Now, this is strange because Xbox One S, it's being launched at that $400 X-Bones, $400 price point. It's out this holiday.
It's $299 it started at.
Is it $299 or $399?
$299.
$399 for the 1 terabyte comes down to $299. I'm going to look.
It's $299. It's $50 up for each SKU, I think.
But they're launching at the 2 terabyte.
That's
version.
true. That's true.
They're launching on the high end.
Yeah.
So, but the people who are going to buy this, if you're going to buy a new console, one, you're in two camps, right? You either have an Xbox now or you don't have an Xbox One now. If you have an Xbox One now, why would you buy this upgrade if you know Project Scorpio is coming?
I think it's mainly next year. I think it's for the other camp.
So it's for the other camp, one people who already have a PS4 or don't have any next gen console, current gen console, and they want to buy one now, but then they're going to be outdated next year with Project Scorpio, which we can all anticipate though. That tells me Project Scorpio is going to be expensive.
Well, okay. Before we get to, sorry. The Xbox One S is a thing that happens when the process sizes shrink and they can put more stuff on the same chip cost. So they can do either cooler, cheaper, faster. Those are the choices that the chip manufacturers have. I think that, I'm surprised that the Project Scorpio die and this die aren't the same die, just with chunks turned off when the Project Scorpio thing doesn't hit.
Oh, same case. It would be cheaper to make. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing about, I think that there's we've reached the point in this console generation is older than you think, right? This is
3 years.
Is this the third year?
Yeah.
This fall, or is this fall the fourth year?
This fall's the third year.
Wow, that's it?
Yeah, 3 years.
Oh, never mind. Okay, never mind.
But I think what you're getting at is that the S is just a continuation of Xbox One in terms of their thinking.
I think Scorpio is too.
It's a way to no, because that's substantially more powerful. I think that's essentially a new console that's entirely backwards compatible. That's all that is, and it continues to run all current games. This gets into is this a problem for developers or not? Because now you have these 3 different platforms to target, all just on Xbox. So even if you're doing...
You're talking about Windows, original Xbox One, and the Xbones.
No, I'm talking about Xbox, the original Xbox One, this new one that supports 4K, and the S.
So the new...
And Scorpio.
The S only supports 4K for video.
Oh, that's a good point. That's
a good point. I guess that's the big upgrade feature that you get with the X. And you're right, $300 is for the base model for 500 gigabytes. They're launching with a 2 terabyte model, which is $400. Which $100 for 1.5 terabytes, that's still expensive.
But you can't put your own hard drives into an Xbox. So like it's either that or buy the external hard drive and deal with copying, which is a pain in the ass.
So for people who maybe bought TVs this past holiday season and are looking to buy a new console, this one will support 4K and also HDR output.
And Blu-ray UHD.
Blu-ray, which is very important because then it's also for people who are potentially buying the new Blu-ray standard at CES, all done now. So that's going to start hitting the market this holiday. And so timing is right for the S.
That has the high dynamic range.
It does.
Yeah.
Cool.
And if you think about it, like the 4K TVs now are at the price where you can get a really nice 1080p TV or a kind of pretty good, but not top quality 4K TV for about the same price. Like you can get a nice 4K TV for like $600 now.
Yeah, but you don't get HDR. And I think most people say that HDR is the thing to wait for.
But the people who go to Best Buy and buy a TV don't know what HDR
or buy on
is.
Woot, and
you will never know.
Yeah, they just want pixels.
So is it a little confusing to you guys that they announced Scorpio?
No, because I think that people looked at the numbers and one Neo was confirmed by PlayStation.
They confirmed it?
They confirmed it in the Financial Times.
Yeah,
they said it's coming this year, and they said
this year even.
They said They said end of their Sony fiscal year, which ends September 30th. So I got to believe some events coming September-ish.
Well, they do PlayStation Experience in the fall.
So that could be very much it. I don't know when it's going to come out though. They could announce it. It may not be out this year. Don't know. But we know that the PS4 was technically more powerful than the Xbox One, just in terms of your flops.
More flops. That's what I want.
More flops. Right? You want
I think
all those
Xbox had more flops this generation.
No, Xbox will have more flops.
Console burn.
But the Xbox Scorpio, what they're saying is with that new die process, they can put a chip in there with 6 teraflops, which is approaching GeForce 1080 level. And that's
across the CPU and the GPU though.
Yep.
But I mean, still, that's really good.
That's massive. And I think that putting Xbox Bones out this holiday at $300 tells me Scorpio is going to be at least $600.
I don't know. We'll see.
A year and a half is a long time.
Yeah.
The more interesting thing to me about the Scorpio is that it signals a change in the console market that's really, really profound, which is that presumably this means that this x86 plus this shader model plus this is the platform for Xbox console games from now on. And that the things we'll see a fall off like we do on phones where, Apple isn't supporting the iPhone 4S anymore for iOS updates. I think we'll see that in the future with the original Xphone.
In my mind, Scorpio is just the next generation Xbox. And all this means is that there's cross compatibility built in.
That's what I was saying. Exactly.
Well, but it's not backwards compatibility. It's native.
Right.
Native compatibility.
Yeah.
It's not an emulation.
But that's the way to look at it.
The model that you're moving away from is that within the new generation, you have to revamp the code to get the graphical benefits. You can't have backward compatibility.
So this is a problem for developers. I mean, I think that's going to be an interesting issue for them to tackle because they're going to have to support both platforms, I think, according to Microsoft.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So
do gamers lose out because developers they're not able to make the best experience, next gen experience,
right? Because
they have to support both, or can they build into their workflow 4K assets? And
yeah, I mean, that's the thing is the resolution bump makes this a lot easier and safer, right? If we were in a situation where 1080p was the law of the land and that's what everyone had, then having a high fidelity Scorpio version and a lower fidelity Xbox One version is a shitload of work. Taking the 1080p version of the game and jacking it up and adding a texture pack is not a ton of work, and it's one extra SKU to support.
So, but I think then the consumers lose out because they don't get the benefit they would normally have expected from a generation bump.
Exactly, like more than just a texture pack.
More than just a texture pack, new shader effects, and all sorts of new physics.
But the thing is, the pipelines have been programmable for almost 10 years now. Like, the difference in what you can do is capability is performance, not capability, right? It's not like we now have new DirectX features in this new chip that allow God rays or specular bump mapping or stuff like that. It's how much math can the chip do to do the thing that you wanted to do that was capable before, it just wasn't performant.
Yeah, I think this point and your last one are both about how the consoles are now mirroring the PC games industry.
Yeah.
And Well, with high, like PC game manufacturers always target a base. Like there's a machine that they make the game to run on, and then they make it run on other ability levels, and that's going to be the problem here too. Like they're going to probably make a game to run best on Scorpio and then scale it back, and it's not going to look that great on the Xbox.
But you're talking about visual fidelity. You're talking about visual fidelity is the scaling factor here when you're talking about one tier versus the next tier. That inhibits though the ability to design gameplay based on performance scaling.
Right.
Like you can't have, for example, a 128 player map or massive numbers of characters or map size that's bigger that supports one console, but then have that dynamically scale for another, the older version.
So the min spec is going to be the PlayStation 4, right? That's going to be what everybody targets because that's what they're the most of out there.
Maybe that's the point, that this is moot because there's already the baseline isn't just within its own ecosystem; it's across PC and the consoles.
Yeah, the baseline's set.
I am curious along the same lines about it mirroring the PC industry, how it will affect the PC games industry, because these console cycles used to come and go, and they would come to a point where the consoles clearly looked worse than the PC industry, and a lot of people would gravitate back to the PCs in order to play the latest, hottest games and get the coolest tech. And now, if we're seeing the same kind of upgrade cycle, but on the consoles, I bet it's going to negatively impact the PC games industry as a whole.
I think the people who are into PC games are into PC games.
Those, absolutely. Yeah. But the people who come and go, who always like get the hot new console and focus there, and then come back to the PC, that's going to stop. I think you're going to see them stay on the consoles.
It's possible.
The other thing that's going to come with Project Scorpio, and again, this is for holiday 2017, is VR support. But Microsoft is not making their own headset. They haven't announced what it'll support and who their partners are, but they said Scorpio will be VR ready.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
It's pretty, everyone seems to think it's going to run the Oculus Rift.
I think it'll be, there are two questions, right? I think it running Oculus Rift is probably a no-brainer. And again, this is our assumption.
They have a relationship.
Yeah. They have an existing relationship. There's an Xbone controller on every Oculus that goes out. But the question is whether they'll be platform agnostic, whether they'll build it in so that it can run more than one type of headset.
Oh, so that you could plug a Vive in, presumably.
Yeah.
I assume that with a console, they're going to have a closed platform and a relationship with one partner or the other, especially given Microsoft and Valve's relationship with each other.
That's my guess as well.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And that leads to the question, why didn't they make an announcement about a partnership?
I mean, maybe the ink isn't on the papers yet.
I mean, the Scorpio announcement at all is kind of a mystery why they did it at all.
And then here's the other thing that we take.
Well, they didn't take the steam out of Sony's sales.
Right, absolutely. And you're talking about holiday 2017. Now, holiday 2017 will be, by my estimation, almost close to 2 years, over a year and a half since the launch of the Oculus Rift. You don't think there'll be a new VR headset from Oculus by then?
So Palmer was on the Giant Bomb live show last night and was talking about this. He didn't announce anything about new hardware, but he said that the cadence was going to be different than we can expect from consoles or phones, which is the thing that they've said before.
Difference meaning slower or faster?
Slower.
Oh.
Yeah, he said that traditionally we've seen stuff move as the silicon advances, and that doesn't look like that's going to be the case because the performance. I don't. You should go watch the show. It was like 30 minutes into the stream. He sits down and talks about this, and it's the second thing Jeff asked him.
It's also worth mentioning that it's only 1 year after the release of Touch, and so
this is true.
That's still going to be a fairly new platform.
The big question I have is if the Oculus that we have for our PCs will just plug into the Xbox, or if you'll have to get an Xbox specific version of the Oculus.
Oh God.
Yeah. I would hope it's the one.
Well, I would
device.
too, but guess what?
No.
Guess how the console market works, guys.
Oh, let's put a special branding on it.
They made a
launch
special
edition, Scorpio launch.
Green.
With Kinect, they made a special PC version, right? With a higher res camera.
Did it have a high res camera?
The developer version of the Kinect.
The first one or the second one?
I don't know.
The first one.
The interesting note on the Xbones, no Kinect port.
Well, without an adapter.
You have to get a $40 adapter, $50 adapter.
So they've given up.
The Kinect is dead, guys.
Well, VR is the future. Yeah. And I mean, and you would need a USB. If there was VR, you need some type of positional tracking camera system. So that would need to be bundled with whatever headset you're buying.
Or lighthouses.
Or
just in everything in your house.
Yep, absolutely.
Attached to your microwave oven.
That's right. On the Sony side, no PlayStation Neo, as we said, announced. It was all about the games, and we can hopefully expect more on Neo later this year. But let's talk about these games.
The PSVR games?
Did you play some stuff?
I did get to play some stuff. Actually, there was a new headset announced also that we skipped over. Razer announced the OS VR Hacker Development Kit 2, which has display parity, at least resolution-wise, frame rate, and low persistence with Vive and Rift. I got to use that. There's video on the site, actually up by now by the time you listen to this podcast on that.
So Razer uses open source VR. Is that the name of their
OSVR, which is their
API?
middleware API.
It's like their Steam VR version?
Yeah, so
Valve uses open VR.
That's what I meant. I meant open VR.
It's not open. It's not the same.
Okay.
But theoretically, they're selling these to consumers so they can run Steam VR using their headset.
Well, I mean, Valve has been pretty transparent about the fact that they built a Steam VR client for the Oculus.
Any headset.
Yeah, they want everybody
if you plug
buying
in,
games
and
from
we
Steam.
haven't actually talked about this much, but Steam VR has been updated very well. Where if you have an Oculus and you run a Steam VR application, you'll see instead of lighthouse icons, you'll see the Oculus camera icon, and it'll recognize and work like the Oculus.
It gets a little confused if you have both plugged in at the same time.
And if you have the home button, you'll see your virtual Oculus camera on your desktop. Yeah, just as you would see the lighthouse boxes. Anyway, the OSVR, the HDK 2, has the same resolution. It's an OLED panel, but it's RGB subpixel arrangement, so it's not OLED. Not
pentile.
Not pentile. It's also not Fresnel lenses.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they're using a 2-element lens system. It was difficult to describe. I only got to use it for about 10 minutes, but there are no God rays.
Oh,
because it's not Fresnel lenses.
Yeah.
How's the FOV?
FOV 110 degrees. Again, I didn't have the other
Wider
ones
or
compare.
narrower?
It looked almost the same.
That's good.
Yep.
Okay.
Text was readable. There was a weird shimmering effect on it. It's not bad. It's almost like, when you get sweat on your phone and you see like the colors shimmer a little. You have to,
like a moire almost? Or like
not
prismatic
patterned,
effects.
not patterned like a moire, but what I'm talking about when like there's
Where you see RGB.
when you see a little bit of that color
Like an oil
come through.
sheen.
Yes, and you have to wipe off your phone. I had that kind of look, which actually I had seen in PSVR a little bit, because PSVR also uses RGB subpixel arrangement, and I don't believe uses Fresnel lenses. But anyway, that's $400 coming out in July. There's no built-in controller solution because this is open, so it's really for gamepad games now or Hydra.
And this is a thing you're going to be able to actually buy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. This is made for consumers. I think they're building into their Razer desktop software. So if you have their keyboards and you have that software installed in your tray, it would just be part of that.
Okay. Can we talk about PlayStation stuff? I'm interested in the games.
Yeah, so PlayStation had a big event. We're not going to talk about all the PS4 games. There's new God of War, Spider-Man, that stuff.
50 games, they said, by the end of the year.
For PSVR, 50 games by the end of the year. Now, we don't know how many of those are actually like ports, how many are exclusives, that they haven't delineated that out or named all of them yet.
I mean, but you assume a lot of it's going to be stuff we've seen on Vive.
I think definitely, because there's motion controllers. There are a lot of games that will work both with motion controllers and also the Track DualShock 4 controller. The big things I think that were announced, and they didn't show Battlefront X-Wing mission. So this is a timed exclusive.
Well, they showed a video.
They showed a video. It wasn't playable. What was playable that I didn't get to play was Batman Arkham VR, which is made by Rocksteady, about an hour-long experience. You're teleporting from place to place to solve a mystery.
Do you get to punch people and stuff, or is it just detective vision?
From what they showed, just the detector vision stuff, scanning, using the motion controllers as a grappling hook, using it as a way to scan for evidence. It starts off, you put on the Batman, you go into the Batcave, you look into a mirror, you're Batman.
So it's CSI Batman.
But it's like an hour-long experience.
That's interesting, though.
Right. Final Fantasy 15 will have a VR component, which I played, which was not good at all. It was a perfect example of how not to tack on VR.
It looked a little cheesy.
It was just poor gameplay.
Was it like that demo thing that they released a few weeks ago, or is it more Final Fantasy? Was it like a game?
It was what they had was just one level where you had a beast, and a giant beast was running around, and you were shooting at it. So not even swords, and you teleported from place to place to shoot at the beast from different directions, and AI characters ran at it and swiped with swords.
At least they were teleporting instead of making people use like D-pad to walk around.
But it was bad teleporting because you really couldn't see what the teleport spots were. And it wasn't good at all. Resident Evil, really interesting. Resident Evil 7, which is set after RE6, what they showed was first person. The game is, so far as we know, a first person game, which is new for Resident Evil. The entire game will be playable in VR.
Yeah.
In first person.
This is, I mean, I give a big...
Hold on.
What?
Wasn't Resident Evil 4 first person, or was it over the shoulder?
I want to say that Resident Evil has only had 2 styles. One, lock camera.
Yeah.
For the first 3.
You're right.
And then third-person camera for the last couple.
But it's kind of first-person shootery controls in a third-person camera, right?
Right. Third-person horror action, which some people really didn't like because they thought the thing that made Resident Evil was
The Chronos
it was a
style.
Chrono-style lock camera position, which makes a lot of sense for VR if you think about it.
Yeah.
But this Resident Evil 7, first person with gamepad locomotion.
See, this I don't understand. I wonder if the suits that are making decisions about putting horror games into the VR platform really know what they're doing. Because for me, if I see a horror game, I'm not even going to play it.
But there are some people who flock
People
to
who
it.
like horror games are going to go bonkers.
No. I mean, obviously, there's a huge market for Resident Evil, but in VR, I don't know if it's that.
Well, it's
big.
optional.
Yes, it is optional. But I mean, horror games in general in virtual reality just cross a line for me, and I'm sure I'm not alone.
Did you get to play this?
So the line for this one was, again, also too long. Just like I thought the event, and this is inside baseball, I thought the lines were too long for the event, and it was difficult to play everything.
So what did you talk to anybody who tried it?
I did. So I watched people who played this and talked to people who played it.
Were they into it?
And yeah, they were into it. So the interesting thing about the Resident Evil demo is if you have a PS4, you can download that demo now to play on your flat screen. And it's also first person.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like Konami released this PT, playable teaser that Kojima worked on. And this is very much in that style, first person horror. And watching people play it, it's basically like Doom, where you're head looking and you're a flashlight, right? You're peeking around and
Old Doom.
Doom 3. Yeah. And you're looking around and that's what's going to unveil stuff. And they can do tricks. It's very, like, you can do very terrifying things because you know where the person's gazing. Capcom has experimented with their, the kitchen, VR demo that they were showing. So this, I think, is set in that similar style. The things that they did with locomotion that were interesting is they allow you to freely move around and use 2 sticks, except on the left stick, you can't look up and down, but you can still turn on the left stick. And then the right stick is strafe and move forward and backward. Actions like crouch, if you hit crouch, it just teleports you crouch. There's no crouch animation.
Okay.
But when you're climbing a ladder, when you're going into the cellar of this house, they will play the animation because you're controlling the movement up and down the ladder.
This doesn't seem good.
Sounds like they're pushing it a little bit.
I think they're pushing it, definitely.
Which was the case at the demo that we saw when they unveiled PSVR. A lot of the demos there were kind of pushing it.
Yeah.
Hold on. What, you mean the thing at GDC with the shark a few years ago?
No. At the GDC event this past year.
When they announced the price.
And then they announced date and price too, right?
They did October 13th, $400. And
It's
again,
$400 without move or camera, though, right?
No move or camera.
And you need the camera.
Yeah.
You
have to have the camera. You don't need the move.
That's right.
So did you get a feeling about, like, did you feel like the move is going to be a required accessory for that? Like the people have to buy if they want to actually play the games?
Nobody who buys PSVR won't get the Move 2. It's a no-brainer.
It's relatively cheap. It's like $50.
And the games is, you know what motion controllers do.
No, I understand. I'm just saying, like, looking at the titles, if you want to play Resident Evil, that's a gamepad thing. So you don't need to do that.
And
If you need to
DS4
play-
has motion controls.
kind of.
No, it's great. DS4 is tracked.
No, I know, but it's not the.
But yeah, you're right.
you get
It's
from
not
hands.
hand presence or simulated abstracting hand presence even, but it is a form of track controller.
There's that one game that they announced there called Static. Did you see that?
I did not get to play
It's like looks like what would be a gamepad game because your hands are locked together inside of a contraption box. And
that sounds good.
It looks like as you use the controls, the things outside of the box that is you're trapped inside of are affected.
And that's what Capcom experimented with the kitchen demo.
Yeah.
You held the gamepad and your hands were in the game in handcuffs.
Yeah.
And so they were locked in that position. So they can do tricks around. And like games that we played at that GDC event, Battlezone, we loved, and that's a gamepad game.
Okay.
Cockpit.
Well, cockpit games are always going to be good with a gamepad, right?
Exactly. You know, like rigs and stuff like that. One last game I do want to talk about because there was a lot, and I didn't get to play all of it. Farpoint.
Is this the Star Trek thing?
No. Farpoint at the PSVR. It's the first PSVR game that will use the new PlayStation Aim controller.
Oh, that's the gun?
This is the gun.
Okay.
Is this the bug thing that I saw last year? Like the real version of that?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
It's like Starship Troopers. The gun is not a move controller attached to a plastic. It is its own separate accessory that has as parity with the DS4. Every button that's on the PS4 and stick is on this gun, except for the touchpad. You don't have a touchpad on the gun. It made the game very fun.
Yeah.
Is it faster than it was last year? So last year it seemed like the environment was huge and you were tiny.
Yeah, it was not very fast.
Okay.
And I think that's good because the design and level design is going to be a huge part of Farpoint because you never want the player to really be moving backwards or moving too much sideways. It's a forward moving game. You're just going forward. And I think there's music being played, but we'll have to.
Was there one-to-one tracking on the gun?
Yes,
like
one-to-one tracking.
When you rotated the gun, it felt like your hands were in the right place and all that?
So they abstracted hand presence because you see your arms holding the gun by the distance the gun was away from your headset.
Yeah.
So if you move the gun too far to the right, then they assume that you're only holding it with one hand and your virtual left hand lets go of the gun in the front and you're only holding it on the right.
Oh, weird.
Right side. You know what I mean?
Oh, so like you can one-hand it.
You can one-hand it, and it wouldn't show both hands holding the gun.
But that makes sense.
But your hand would detach at a different time than your real hand, right? So.
Maybe.
Right. So they would try to have that matched up as perfectly as possible.
That's hard
And
to
again,
do.
it's based on the relationship between the headset and the gun.
Yeah, right.
I have some expertise here. That's a challenge. That's hard.
And the gun maps really well, I assume, to the gun in game.
Perfectly.
So it's the same shape, except the gun in game is bigger.
The gun game will have more accessories, but it's like basically that same. The grip is in the exact same location.
That's really neat.
Now, what's also interesting is that this game will be playable in PCVR with just the DualShock controller.
That makes
and they're
sense.
not changing the model up for the DualShock. It still looks like the gun.
Okay.
I thought that was a wasted opportunity.
So like you hold the gun like this?
I don't know.
I don't. Yeah.
I think you have to hold the DualShock controller and aim it like you would like a flying ship and use the triggers as the.
That's a first party game, right?
It's a. I don't think the developer I think is based in San Francisco.
Did they announce a price for the gun?
They did not. No release date or price.
What do you think? $50?
I think 75.
It's going to be more. Yeah. It's a DualShock plus a move.
Yeah.
Did they have the Star Trek thing there?
That's a Ubisoft game, and they did have an Ubisoft booth. Didn't have time to play that, so we're gonna try to make a special trip to see that. This is Ubisoft's Star Trek. What's the game called?
It's basically like it's Chris Pine Bridge Simulator.
Wait, what's the name?
Star Trek Bridge Crew VR.
Bridge Crew VR, which is Bridge Commander, but multiplayer, 4-player in VR.
It's very
Artemis.
Team.
Isn't it very like just casual? I mean,
It does not look complicated right now.
low barrier to entry.
Low barrier to entry button simulator. I think they're trying to get. I think there's room for improvement based on what they've said. Again, haven't played it yet.
Yeah.
But because they demoed it using Oculus Touch, right?
Yeah.
That's promising.
Which is very promising because you have hand presence.
That's optional, by the way.
Oh, the touch.
Yeah.
I mean, as it should be.
And if you're going to have touch and track controllers, and the fidelity is good enough, the precision is good enough that you can have a complex system. It's all software then.
Look, bro, I'm not playing with you unless you have hand controllers.
Easy, medium, hard complexity to do more things.
Yeah.
And they can design a game and design a great adventure where you can maybe min-max it if you have more precise controls.
It would be
and
nice
better communication
too and they'll probably do this, I imagine, if the different players can have different skill levels.
Yes.
So that if you can play with someone who really have never played before, and then everybody gets challenged.
That's right.
It's like Rock Band.
Yeah.
I saw that and I was thinking, all I could think of was the scene from Galaxy Quest when the Wesley Crusher equivalent on Galaxy Crush sits down and he's like, oh, they looked at how I was doing my controls this is good.
Right.
This is exciting.
Yeah. They had, it was. I'm excited for that, but I'm also I have to temper it because what I heard of it was it's not the Star Trek game we all want in VR yet.
Well, I think if you want that, you may have to look for Elite Dangerous, and the next season of Elite Dangerous will have multiple crew members in one ship.
How? But it would take me weeks to get to where you guys are in the universe right now.
I think they'll probably just everyone gets a new ship, and I think they're moving from a different direction. They're moving from so much complexity, and then putting in social features as opposed to social being first and then increasing complexity maybe later.
That makes sense.
Let's cover stuff.
Okay.
Bethesda has a press conference, VR related. Doom in VR. It won't be the full Doom game. It will be some type of Doom experience, but the full game next year in VR will be Fallout 4 for the.
It seems backwards. Seems like they should have made the full Doom and made a Fallout 4 experience.
Doom is way more fast paced.
How do you do Doom in VR? I mean, that would be impossible.
I think you have you do a series of
Impossible
like Last
is nothing.
Stands.
impossible.
Yeah, you're standing in the middle of a room with your buddies and you have to shoot you have horde mode.
Right,
It's like super easy. It's
yeah,
raw
yeah,
data.
But that's a new game. Like you wouldn't do Doom 4
you
that
can
way.
put all the models, you pull those assets in and take like 15 minutes. And they had that out by Friday.
Okay, so how do you move through the world then? And if
You don't. You're in a series of last stands.
Okay, so it's a new game. Yeah.
Kind of, not really.
What are you talking
I mean, the whole game is based around movement. You are absolutely correct. Like you can't fight those imps and Keiko demons,
And you can't do
without moving
animations,
constantly.
the kill animations either.
You could, but you'd have to like physically do it with your hands. You just reach up and rip the jaws apart. And
But it wouldn't be
jam
that.
your fist
It
down
wouldn't
his
be that
throat.
trigger, that one hotkey activated.
You have to
animation.
reach out and grab the imp mouth. Just split the skull. It's a little gruesome.
I am kind of excited about the Fallout because it's a beautiful world and there's a lot of construction in that world that I think lends itself to VR.
So
Did
question
either of you
one,
play that game?
locomotion.
What?
Did either of you play Fallout 4 at all?
Yeah, a little bit. A couple hours.
I found it unplayable.
I mean, it was a beautiful world.
It was beautiful.
Why?
Yes.
So that's all I'm talking about. I just want to explore that world.
So do you want to explore it with using some type of analog stick or teleportation?
Oh, it's got to be teleportation.
Lerp, lerp, lerp.
Blink, blink, blink.
Lerp. Lerp.
I gotta think more about this, but the more I think about it, like I'm so unconvinced that teleportation is gonna be the solution for open world VR gaming.
What is it?
I don't know if there is one at
can't-
all.
Maybe an option to move through the world, like laterally, but it would make a lot of people sick.
Yeah. Put a spaceship.
Yeah, you got to have a vehicle.
I mean, if you think about the way I play Skyrim and Fallout 3 in those games, usually I walk around for the first like 3 or 4 hours. And then as soon as I start unlocking fast travel points, I never, ever walk anywhere again.
I think the games have to be designed so it's less about the distances are just ways to access interesting room scale nodes where you're doing things in either room scale or in front of you. Okay, so we'll have to wait and see. And then Oculus.
They weren't showing either of those on the floor, were they?
No, I think Bethesda had an event that they might have been playable, but I wasn't.
thought they did.
Yeah, they did. I wasn't there for that. Oculus was there. We have an interview going up.
How was Nate?
Nate and Palmer were good.
Okay.
Got to chat with them. You have to watch our video for the full interview, but I did ask them about the launch problems. I asked them about the exclusivity stuff, and I got hands-on time with just a few of the games. So stuff that had been shown before. Unspoken?
What did they say about the exclusivity stuff? Can you give a hint? Were they defensive or were they?
Well, can we set this
Yes,
up?
we can totally set this up.
All right, so there's a game that called Giant Cop, and it was on Steam. It was going to be released for Vive, and then Vive support was mysteriously removed as it was announced as an Oculus Touch launch title.
My understanding is they'd also taken pre-orders on Steam.
Right, and so there was wow. I mean, our Oculus on Reddit blew up. Our Vive had a 1,000+ posts, upvoted on this very topic. And people were very upset about it, saying Oculus is buying up games out of the indie community and making them exclusives or timed exclusives just by throwing money at these developers.
Yep.
And worse, there was a pitchforks and torches saying, let's never support these developers again. People who are selling to Oculus don't deserve our support and need to be taught a lesson.
Well, that's crazy talk.
And then what came out of that was also then it turned out Sirius Sam, one of the developers from Crow Team, said that they had been approached by Oculus and been offered money to be an exclusive.
Shit ton.
And then what they described. And then they turned it down because they didn't believe in exclusive, which again then rallied the pitchforkers.
Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, so part of the challenge of a lot of the small studios who are building games for this first wave of VR stuff is that they originally planned to make games that would be out last fall when the Vive was originally supposed to come out, right? And if you're a small studio and you had $150,000 or $200,000 budgeted to make a game, which seems like a lot of money if you're sitting at home, but if you have 3 or 4 people working for you, that isn't a ton of money. And now we're looking at delays shipping the Oculus version. The Vive has just now reached 72 hours that they can ship on. Like if you're looking at Oculus Touch coming out this fall and you're thinking, man, there's only 50,000 people or 100,000 people that could possibly buy my game, and Oculus says, hey, here's X amount of dollars to do a platform exclusive for 3 months, and that will keep my business in business, that's hard to say no to.
So I agree with the idea of time exclusive. I think paying for time exclusive is fine. And exclusives for consoles, it's nothing new. Absolutely nothing new. And E3 is all about what are the exclusives for the consoles.
Who gets Call of Duty maps?
I think what brings people up in arms are 2 things. One, VR is still a budding industry, and you have a one side, Steam VR side, where it's all about open, and it's not no DRM either, because Steam is a form of DRM.
Yeah.
But it's about buying. The platform is the store. You buy any headset, and as long as you pay, developer gets the money, and you get to play the game. And the question for Oculus is, what is their platform? Is their platform the store, or is their platform the headset? And can you separate the two? But I think piss people off in the Crow Team example is that that's a game that didn't necessarily need the funding, and the money was just going to be to bolster a launch lineup so that people get locked into one platform. Yeah. Which I agree, that's bullshit. There's also two ways to look at it, and it's for exclusivity, who approached who? Did the developer go to Oculus and say, we need the money, we want to believe in the system, we want to develop for VR, and we could use the money, and this game otherwise wouldn't exist in this form without some support? Or did Oculus go out with their money, with the cash bags, and say, let's lock in so that we can sell more people into our walled garden?
So there's if they're building software for Oculus, there's a two-way conversation happening all the time, right? Because when you're releasing software on a platform, then you talk to the developer relations people, and that goes back and forth. Who reached out to who? I guess what I'm saying is it would be very challenging to know who reached out to who, because it's an ongoing conversation that's probably taken place for years.
Right.
It's also what we need to mention, that the giant comp guys came out and discussed exactly what happened. And they defended the decision, rightfully, I believe, saying that they were always going to release on one platform to begin with because they're a small team. And despite what people may assume, it's not easy to release on multiple platforms at once with a small team. And so this did not affect their plans at all. The reason they had Vive support to begin with was because it was the only developer platform available to them.
But are they going to release on Vive later? Is it a timed exclusive? So it's just timed.
They re-added Vive support to the Steam page just to calm people down. And it is a timed exclusive. And in fact, they said Oculus never even asked for a timed exclusive, that they said, look, we can't do both. We're going to wait a few months and then release the Vive version.
It's hard to do. Especially if you have something complex.
Yeah, and from a developer perspective, you can attest to that.
We did it. It was a Herculean effort to get two versions out within 2 weeks, and their sacrifices were made.
So I think this has been overblown. I think people who are really concerned about VR as a budding industry, I get it. I love VR as much as you do, but there's a lot of momentum here. And this is not going to be the make or break generation of VR.
I'd rather developers get more experience making games and have their stepping stones and get their first 3 VR things out, so that when VR is ready for the mass market, maybe when Project Scorpio comes out, maybe when PSVR or on phones, then we'll see games that have been in the works for 3 or 4 years that are going to really blow us away.
I also hope eventually we do see Vive support on the Oculus Store. I think that would be a huge thing for Oculus to do, and Valve to get it done.
All right, the games that were there. The one I think that's most worth talking about is Wilson's Heart.
Oh, dude, I'm more excited about this than anything else I saw.
What is this?
And I hate survival horror games, but this is like a Twilight Zone episode, right? Did you try it?
I did.
Oh, I can't wait to hear about it, because this really crossed that line of campiness to where I think I could actually handle it.
Did Oculus have a press conference?
No.
Okay, so this is all just stuff that's come out of meetings? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So this is like a black and white, it looks like you're in the middle of the game of Clue or something like that.
Yeah, so you're in a psychiatric ward or hospital of some kind. You wake up, and the idea is that you're traversing this hospital to solve the mystery of who you are and why you're there, and there's strange things going on.
So you have amnesia of some kind?
I mean, you're a new player, so absolutely. Right?
Amnesia.
In the game. What a novel concept. The way you get around the game is teleportation. So as you look around, it's for Oculus Touch, of course. You look around and you see then your character fades in a spot that you can teleport to, whether it's in front of a door or in front of a point of interest, and then you press the touch controller and then you jump there. And then that point, that then becomes a, not exactly room scale, but just a area of interaction, either to survey and look around, or to solve a puzzle, or to collect an item.
Node-based, or is it?
Node-based.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The nodes aren't marked in the environment until you look in the area so you're supposed to still visually explore with your eyes. Can I look there? Can I go there? And then if your character then pops in your field of view, then you can teleport there. Yeah.
Did they show any kind of chaperone bounds?
No chaperone bounds.
So you just stand on the mat in the middle of the room and don't get off the mat.
And everything. And when you teleport to a place, no matter what direction you're looking at it in, you always warp in facing where the character is supposed to be facing.
Did PSVR show chaperone type bounds?
Nope. no chaperone bounds. Again, in PSVR.
They had multi-camera setup there, though, right?
One
Did
camera.
I just hear about that?
One camera.
Okay.
So that teleportation. It's important because that also made it a little bit disconcerting. Eventually, my brain trained itself to
Which way
know
you're
which
looking?
way you're facing. Because if I'm looking and I see my avatar looking, like for example, at that door, and it's facing the left, I would imagine if I teleport there, I'm still going to be looking at the door on the side. But once I fade in, I am actually looking where the avatar is facing.
That's one of
you're
those
always facing forward.
That's one of those things that it takes people a few minutes to adjust to, and then they're okay forever. But I find that when you take the headset off, I have no idea which way I'm facing in the actual room.
Very true. And it happened in this case as well. I don't want to spoil the story and stuff like that. There's a lot to explore. The puzzle, it really feels like a adventure puzzle game, an old school adventure game.
A little creepy, but not jump out.
Definitely
Scary.
There were like 2 moments of fade in out scares.
All right.
Like a character would pop up when you didn't expect.
Okay.
Great.
But it's all about hand presence, right? Because this is using the Oculus Touch. So you're interacting with the world by picking up objects, by turning pages, by doing other things. And the difference, as we've talked about, between Touch and the Vive controllers is the Vive controllers abstracts hand presence by you holding a physical object. And while you're still holding a physical object with Touch is more ergonomic. So your neutral pose is what your hands are supposed to be.
It's not that it's more ergonomic. I mean, it is more ergonomic, but it's more the position of your hand in the controller is much more definitive.
It's in a more neutral pose, right? It's
They can abstract where your fingers are based on the way that you hold the controller, because there's only one way to hold the controller.
Exactly.
Whereas the Vive wand you can hold. I don't see one here, but you can hold it in like 15 different poses, and it's.
And the Vive wand, you can only infer your finger position with the trigger and the touchpad.
Only by pulling the trigger.
Only by pulling.
There's no capacitive track.
Right. There's only one passive abstraction, which is your thumb.
And
while
nobody uses.
And on the Touch, it's your thumb and all the buttons, plus the squeeze icon and the pointing.
Really, the Xbox type buttons are capacitive now too?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so the amount of poses you can do with the Oculus Touch, it's not perfect hand tracking because you're not bending each individual finger down, but you can do several things. Like with the thumb, you can do a grab, you can point. And so the thing I found interesting though in Wilson's Heart is there's a difference between your in-game hand model and when you would interact with something. And when you pulled your real hand too far away from where the in-game model would be, as opposed to it like doing some crazy ragdoll thing, it would ghost away your skeletal model.
Huh. Like in Surgeon Simulator on the Vive. With that, they use that to handle collision. So if you move your virtual hand through virtual physical objects, it leaves the hand on the table and gives you a ghost image.
Exactly.
Through the
Exactly.
world.
They would ghost your skeletal model real world position.
Yeah.
Faded out from where your in-game model was.
These are the fun problems of VR to solve. Like this stuff, like figuring out how to handle stuff like this is really interesting.
So I found it really enjoyable. I like that it's narrative based.
Does it have replayability?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
It's a first party exclusive?
It is. It will be an Oculus Touch exclusive. And it makes some sense to that because there is not a lot of parity between, like, if you talk about the base level functionality for motion controls, it's pretty basic. Like Move is the most basic, and it's just the position and 2 buttons.
Yeah.
And you don't have that. I mean, I guess there's the thumbstick.
other
The thumbstick.
buttons.
There's a thumbstick on top, right?
No, there's no thumbstick on Move. It's a big fat button, a trigger, and then there's a couple of side buttons.
So it's just a few buttons. You're not going to get like what you can do with gestures in Touch. You're not going to do with gestures in Move as complex.
Basically, the only platform you can have real gestures on, unless you map them to one of the buttons in a binary way, is on the Oculus.
Right. Unless you're doing something like Manus VR, where you're doing a third-party peripheral that's glove-based.
Yeah, but I think that the gestures are less interesting to me for games and much more interesting for me for social stuff.
Yeah.
The ability to point and thumbs up and make finger guns and stuff like that is really interesting when you get into social spaces.
What's it like being in a black and white environment in VR? Was that interesting? Or would you rather it be colored?
Is it all black and white, or was it like Blues and Bullets where there was a highlight
color? It
color?
was just desaturated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I had to review that footage. It was just an artistic style.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, VR, I love that in VR, you can be in cartoonish worlds, low polygon worlds, and you still feel presence. I don't think it took or added more presence just from the art style.
Okay.
It's gave it a good look. The other game was The Unspoken, which I played. This is Insomniac. Insomniac has a ton of VR games. They're really,
3, right? 3 this year.
Feral Rights, Unspoken, and they did Edge of Nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Unspoken is the touch controller one, and that was a lot of fun.
That's the Magic game?
That's the Magic game.
I'm super excited for this.
Yeah.
It
You
looks
cast
cool.
spells and
You
stuff?
cast spells. Mini games basically allow you to cast spells, like gesture mini games, drawing, folding a paper airplane, hammering the right things. Very simple mini games. Drawing a box.
You remember Black and White? You would cast spells based on the mouse patterns you
Yeah.
do. That's kind of what I'm imagining.
That's exactly what it is. Draw a square. You got a shield the shape of a square.
Dude.
Yeah. And also physics based. So you throw fireballs by holding a button, fire, and then flicking your wrist to throw. And practice can make better.
They've released a ton of games this year.
No, did that look as good in game as it does in the trailer?
Yep.
The trailer looks kind of pre-rendered. I mean, it looks awesome.
It looks great.
Wow. All right.
It reminded me a lot of Waltz of the Wizard for HTC Vive.
Yeah.
In that you can also throw fireballs, but the physics of throwing the fireball was much better in the touch version than with the Vive.
Did you win?
I only played against AI, but yes, I did win.
Okay.
You know, the thing we didn't talk about at all on the Xbox segment was the Windows Play Anywhere stuff. Have you talked about that yet?
No.
So they're releasing, it seems like, all first-party Microsoft games on both platforms, on Windows 10 and Xbox, sold through the Microsoft Store on Windows. They had some problems with the first couple of releases they did for that. I want to say Quantic Dream was the first one. And it had like issues using certain types of controllers and things like that. But it seems interesting that you presumably you're gonna be able to buy games on the Xbox and then also play them on the PC.
Yeah, and it'll be cloud-based saves so that your games are synced across platforms.
Yeah.
All right. We are actually running out of time. I do want to talk about one last game I played, which was Raw Data, HTC Vive game. So Vive had some presence on the floor. Raw Data is from Survios. They are a VR company all about full body presence in game with skeletal modeling. And they show their new level. So wave-based, multiplayer VR game. Super excited for it.
Is Raw Data the one that's available now? Multiplayer?
Yeah, there's I want to say it is because I played it at GDC multiplayer. I think the demo now currently.
Okay.
I'm actually not sure about
the alpha demo.
the
I
early
don't
access.
have the alpha thing.
Yeah, they put out some version. I'm not sure if because that's not the version I played, but the version I played so far have been multiplayer, and I think it's fantastic. Multiplayer combat games in VR, like Horde style games, are great.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about playing this. I sent a note. I sent a note to their Twitter account and begged for a key.
They will be doing early access, I believe, in July, which will have this version for HTC Vive owners. They're doing class-based heroes now, so you have katanas or dual-wielding
So instead
pistols.
of like picking the gun when you spawn, you just pick the class and then
pick the class, and you have special abilities. Bullet time, interesting. Bullet time on one person, then activates bullet time for everyone, of course.
Yeah, of course.
So they want to allow teamwork where maybe one person activates the bullet time, and then the person with the katana gets to do throw the telekinesis katana out in slow motion, stuff like that.
Cool.
It looks like you were right about Super Hot, by the way. It looks like the speed of the world is controlled by your personal movement.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah.
It looked like that to me.
So even hands?
That's what it looked like to me.
So again, the Super Hot, what did I say it was? Looking around is free. Taking action is costly.
yes, it looks like that's exactly where they went.
That makes sense.
That's what the game had been on PC, right?
Well, moving, yes, but it's different in VR. I mean, you now, like in the PC, you could be absolutely still. You can't do that in VR. Your hands and head are always going to be moving a little bit.
You might not be able to be perfectly still.
Oh, I'd like to see you try.
All right. We'll have a little bit more E3 coverage on the site, a couple videos, but I think that's it. Anything else you guys wanted to talk about? It's been a lot.
Nah, I mean,
There's a lot of just like general gaming news, but I don't think we
The
need
Zelda
to talk
game
about
looks
that.
cool.
I thought God of War was amazing. I mean, I don't even play those games, but that was a killer first act or first level with the sun. It's
Norse gods.
very emotional.
There's a new Kojima game with Norman Reedus, and then a new Spider-Man game on the PS4.
And Watch Dogs 2 set in SF.
The Spider-Man game on the PS4 is another Insomniac joint.
Wow. Yeah. A lot of games.
And Ratchet and Clank for the PS4 this year too.
Those guys are up all night.
Did you talk to the Oculus guys about first party exclusivity stuff they're paying for versus stuff like their different rules for third party stuff versus first party stuff?
They did not delineate between how that business model works.
Okay. Interesting. What was the kind of overall mood on did you talk to people about, not Oculus folks, but like Oculus and Vive? Because, HTC announced, I think between the last podcast and now,
72 hours
they're shipping in 72 hours.
Yeah.
And I know people are still getting like early pre-orders of Oculus that haven't been fulfilled yet.
I will say that they had a big booth there and there was a long line for their booth.
Okay.
So it seemed like people were still interested, and, regardless of how the VR community has felt toward it and the early adopters, which they clearly did not service well with the delays on the product, in terms of the mainstream, people are still super, they're not as knowledgeable. They're still curious, and there's still so much to learn.
Every day, people are still experiencing VR for the first time.
Yeah.
That's right. And mixed reality, a lot of live mixed reality demos on the E3 floor.
That's
which I was
interesting.
impressed by. They did a mixed reality live stream from some booths.
Cool.
Yeah.
We're using Vives, I assume,
and Oculus
and Touch. Okay.
Yeah, and Touch.
I'm really surprised we didn't see more chaperone type stuff from any of the other standing platforms.
Well, that's a platform thing. I mean, that's built into Steam VR.
No, I mean, but they have to have a solution for not walking into the walls.
No doubt.
Game design.
Yeah.
We'll see.
All right, that will do it for us this week on This Is Only a Test. Hey, next week we actually won't be podcasting from this office. We may have an episode. I can't promise anything yet, but we will actually be traveling and in Australia. Joey and I are going down under for a week. We may record an episode there and give you a full report, but if we don't, then we'll see you the week after that.
Watch out for the platypi, man.
I know. All those jellyfish. I'm going to find Dory.
32 Wallaby Way.
Nice memory, man.
Let me tell you how many times I've watched Finding Nemo in the last year.
Yeah, the benefits of a 3-year-old.
Have fun in Australia, man.
Yeah, and we will have more content on the site as always. E3 stuff all this week, some BattleBot stuff the week following, a whole premium week of build with Frank Ippolito from our old office, which no longer exists. Frank and I paint resin model kits all week long, so you want to check that out on tested.com.
Has BattleBot started yet?
Next week, June 23rd, I believe, is the premiere. I want to say that's a Thursday night on ABC.
Excellent.
Adam was a judge there. You guys have anything you want to promote? Where can people find you on the internet?
We have an updated version of Foo coming later this week. So we added neural networks to the arm and body animation, so that the weird collisions and the super stiff arms and all of that stuff that we had on the launch version, the animation will be corrected.
Oh. So it's the same episode, but the animations are much better.
The animations are better. We'll have more episodes coming soon. We've had a lot of, the thing that happened with Foo that we didn't expect was when we released the preview, we got a lot more kind of mainstream attention than we were expecting. And that's changed our content plans a little bit. But we'll still have more stuff coming later this year and have more to talk about in a few weeks.
Not to promote it, but I am going to release improved PinSim software. So it's got some new features in it. I made one for somebody who wanted one, and added some new features, which are really, really quite cool. So now the plunger can map 1-to-1 exactly in game. So like when you start pulling the plunger back, it pulls back in game immediately.
How are you doing that?
You have to pull the plunger to the point where in game it starts to move, and then you have to hit a bunch of buttons on the PinSim, and then it uses that as the new 0 point.
But I mean, how are you tracking the plunger?
Oh, it's fantastic. I'm super psyched about my solution. It's an IR distance sensor, and I 3D printed a mount for the sensor and for this disc that goes on the plunger. So it's
on the back of the plunger?
So it's completely solid state. There's no parts from the plunger that touch the rest of the PinSim, and it's perfectly accurate.
Oh, that's awesome. I wondered, that's really cool.
I had to get Twitter to help me out with the math of linearizing the actual data you get from the sensor. You tried to help with your math skills.
I'm not good at math.
It turns out it wasn't helpful.
No.
Thank you for giving it some attention.
I kind of vaguely remember that. That was a long time ago. The other thing I thought about that you could do for that mechanism is you could take the way that they do optical mouse, like scroll wheels in mice.
But then you're touching. I didn't want no touching. No touching.
Okay, no touching.
You know what I mean? Because
you need it to bounce back in and
touching
hit really
breaks
hard.
Eventually. There's a lot going on in there.
That's true.
All right.
Infrared. Cool.
Awesome. And of course, you can find all our content on the site tested.com and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/testedcom. Do we have an outro this week, Will?
We do. It's Rail Geek presents Boaty Outro.
Enjoy.
Hi there, I didn't see you. Tested.
Well, first you have to find Mr. and Mrs. McBoatface and get them to have a kid and then name their child Bodie.
Didn't know that had me in it.
Happy National Week of Making.